grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worry on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear a pitter-pat? And that happy tune is your step. Life can be so sweet on the sunny, sunny, sunny side of the street. Hi, welcome to another On the Sunny Side of the Street. I'm your host, Todd Gross, a clinical psychologist and director of Adams Street Associates, group private practice in Newton. And as you know, our show On the Sunny Side of the Street really likes to focus on the positive side of the news. All the news that you usually do not hear on the regular news, but all the everyday kinds of experiences where people are helping each other, making a difference in people's lives, or overcoming odds. And sometimes one of the ways that people really affect positive change is through their thinking and their writing. And today we have a guest with us who's had a profound impact on our thinking and a very positive thinking kind of person. The mother of positive psychology is one of the nicknames. And her name is Ellen Langer. She is a social psychologist at Harvard University, and she's the author of over 200 research articles as well as 12 books, including the international bestseller Mindfulness. She's written on becoming an artist, reinventing yourself through mindful activity. And her latest book, which by the way is very, very readable for the public, and it is called Counterclockwise. That's going to be the book that you see there on the screen. That's the one we're going to be focusing on today in our discussion. Her books have been translated into over 15 different languages as well. She's received 3 Distinguished Scientist Awards and a Guggenheim Fellowship. And she is the first psychologist to be the subject of a full-length movie starring Jennifer Aniston as Ellen. Her experiments are very, very creative and thought-provoking. And it's going to be fun to discuss with her the implications on health, aging, and the practice of medicine. And that's what I found particularly interesting as a psychologist reading her experiments. They're very innovative. So welcome, Ellen, and thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me, Todd.
Very nice to meet you. I think maybe as a way to start for our audience, I wonder if you could comment a little bit about the meaning of this idea of the psychology of possibility, how that can affect our health and well-being, and also maybe a little of how you got involved in this too.
Okay, well, the reason I'm talking about the psychology of possibility, which I'm trying to develop basically, is essentially because most of us are given information. The
Yes.
world gives us information in textbooks, in newspapers, teachers, that give us absolute facts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you in a moment why we need to think of these absolute facts as suspect.
Challenging.
Right. And so when we recognize that we don't know as much as we think we know, that opens up lots of possibilities for us. That possibility and the psychology of possibility is really about what might be, what we can strive towards, what might come about in a very different way from just a description of what is. And remember again that what is may not really be.
Yes.
And that becomes a little complicated, but let me tell you a little story.
Sure.
So I was at this horse event, and this man asked me if I'd watch his horse because he was going to get his horse a hot dog. Well, I said to myself, horses don't eat meat. That's ridiculous. But I was willing to watch his horse. He came back with the hot dog, and the horse ate it. And then I thought, well, what does it mean horses don't eat meat? Doesn't it depend on how big they are, how hungry they are, excuse me, how much grain is mixed with the meat, and so on?
Yes, all the variables.
So that made me realize that the facts that we take as true are sometimes true. Now, when you do research, whether it's medical research, psychological, any research, that at the end, after you decide which variables to put in and which measures to take and so on, all you get at the end are probabilities, which say that if you do this all exactly the same way, you're likely to get the same findings. And these are translated as absolutes, that if you do this, so horses don't eat meat, for example.
Instead of considering exceptions.
Right, and so there are many aspects of our health where we don't bother trying to exert any control because we've been taught that there is no control. And you can never prove uncontrollability. All you can prove is either we can control it or we don't know.
Yes.
So that's where the possibility enters in. We don't know today. Perhaps we'll know tomorrow.
Sounds like a double-edged sword in a way, because in some ways people take a lot of comfort in thinking that they know, but on the other hand, I think a lot of the exciting things about your work is that when you're open to possibility, so much more can happen.
Yeah. Well, I have two responses to that. The first is people overwhelmingly confuse the stability of their mindsets with the stability of the underlying phenomenon. So it's changing. Now, you want to hold it still,
Whether you like it or not, it's changing.
Exactly.
I couldn't agree more.
But the second, that much of the time that people run from uncertainty is because they think there is certainty and they don't know it. So, you know, if I think that I'm supposed to know it, you know it, I have to hide from all of that.
Yes.
When I recognize that, in fact, I don't know it, you don't know it, nobody knows it, because it's basically unknowable, because it's changing all the time and looks different from different perspectives. Then we can exploit the power in that uncertainty.
Gotcha. No, when you said that, Ellen, what I was thinking was the implications of what you said for the doctor-patient relationship, too, in terms of we think that they're supposed to have the certainties for us, that we're supposed to passively receive.
Yeah, no, we have to become much more active in our health care. Essentially, you know, we see doctors are bright, by and large, good-natured, well-educated. However, the human body is far more complex than medical science can deal with at the moment. And that the information that doctors are trained with are basically normative data. That means what may be true for most of the people that are tested, again, in that particular way. You're not the norm. You know, so
you're an individual.
Right, exactly. You have information about yourself that the doctor doesn't have. And we should go to doctors, but we need to not give ourselves over to the medical profession because they don't know. And there are things that we can do. You know, sometimes there are people who have disorders where the medical world just, you know, either they can't help them or they can't help them yet because they haven't figured out what it is. And there are things that we can do for ourselves. And the interesting thing to me is that it's very exciting when I am suggesting, which I will in a moment, something new where even if I'm wrong, I'm right. Okay, so what does that mean? The main idea in a lot of this work is for us to notice variability. What that means is notice when things are changing. Whatever symptoms you have, they're not staying the same.
Right.
They're getting better, worse, whatever. If you notice when they're changing, then that gives rise to the question, well, why? And then you start to come up with ideas. Now, the interesting thing is that when you're coming up with these ideas, even if you're wrong, the 30-some-odd years of research that I've done prior to the research I report in Counterclockwise suggests that that's good for your health.
Yes.
So that, you know, that seeking these answers is part of the essence of being mindful.
Extending what you said, I know you've written a book about this as well, but it pervades all your work. You've mentioned a couple times the concept of mindfulness and also the opposite, mindlessness. I wonder if you could say to the viewing audience a little bit about what you're meaning by that so they can understand it.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking me
Sure.
that. It's amazing that this concept is so simple, but the effects of being more mindful in this way are so profound that it's startling. Being mindful, in the work that I've studied, is just noticing new things. That's it. It doesn't matter if what you notice is smart or silly. It doesn't even matter if it's correct. As long as you're noticing new things, that puts you in the present, makes you sensitive to these changes. Now, when you're mindless, you take this information that you've been given. You know, you could notice something, then you take it as real. When you think you know, you don't pay any attention. So you're holding it still, it's changing, and so at some point you fall over on yourself.
I can see implications for your health, too.
Yeah, well, that's where I was getting to. But before that, it's interesting to me that so many people say, be in the moment, be in the present. And that's fine, except that when you're not in the present, you're not there to know you're not there. So that's why it's the advice to be in the present really falls on deaf ears. This is the way to be in the present. You notice new things, and which in doing so, you're feeling enlivened. And it's the feeling of engagement. Now what happens in 30 years of research, we have people in all different circumstances noticing new things, and we find improvements in virtually everything. But the most dramatic was studies that we did years ago where they live longer.
Yes.
So you become happier, healthier, more productive, fewer accidents, more creative. It's 30 years worth, so I'm not going to tell you each of them
But
now,
something so simple and yet so profound as noticing.
Right. And you know that you have to notice first that you're not noticing. You know, you have to go out and recognize that you don't know. Because when you think you know, you don't pay any attention. Why should you?
It closes the door.
Exactly. And so you need to open the door in this very simple way. You notice, it feels so good that you notice more. You start to see you don't know. As we said before, it's okay not to know because nobody knows.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And then you are able to avert dangers before they arise and take advantage of opportunities that otherwise you wouldn't even know.
I love that way of thinking and the implications for how you can have a lot of control over your health, too. You can have input, at least. One of the things that I found very exciting was reading your book, Counterclockwise, which I know we're going to focus on a little today, and has all these principles that you're talking about. I want to stress for the viewers out there that although I want to ask Ellen about one of the particular experiments that she mentions in the book that are very exciting, this is a book that has all kinds of information all over the place around a lot of the topics around mindfulness and around your health, and it's a terrific read, and it's also something, if you read it, you do not have to be a scientist. You do not have to get lost in jargon. This is very, very readable, and I compliment you on being able to write something that is really, truly for the public. Would love you to tell the people a little bit about what I would consider a brilliant experiment that you did on in Counterclockwise. It's talked about with the population of older men.
Okay, so before I do that, let me give you the theory, just a little theory behind it, because this drove all of the recent experiments. And the recent experiments, which we might not have time to talk about, are experiments that show that by changing one's mindset, one can lose weight, vision improves, hearing improves. I mean, it's anyway,
that's what was
very
wonderful in
very
this book.
exciting.
I loved reading those.
But the counterclockwise study, which I did a long time ago, was one where, actually, I was going to tell you the theory.
Sure.
So, very simply, we take the mind and the body and we put them back together. That's all. When we put them back together, then it's one. Now, then, wherever we put the mind, we're necessarily putting the body.
Good.
So
Good
I
point.
have study after study where we put the mind in one place or the other and take the measurements from the body. In the original counterclockwise study, what we did was to take old men to a timeless retreat where they were going to live as if it was 20 years earlier. So their minds were going to be put back to the past. And then we would see, did that affect them physically?
Yes.
Now, what we had them do was to live that week with discussion after discussion, those were planned, 2 of these a day, where they were going to be speaking about the past in the present tense.
Yes.
So we did everything we could do
To immerse themselves in it.
Right. And we had a comparison group that was also going to go to the retreat for a week, also going to speak about the past. However, they were speaking about the past as the past, so in the past tense. So their minds were always aware, so to speak, that now was now and then was then, which is what we were trying to...
Yes.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And the reason that I discuss this study in detail in this book is kind of interesting, because I've discussed it before, but now because it sets up all the other experiments that I had mentioned to you, but also that I'm older now. And it happens, you know, as time passes.
I understand these things. I join you there.
So that there are some things that happened that were so remarkable that I hesitated to report them initially. Yeah. You know, I'm sort of off the scale to start with in being straight.
That's why I
with some
wanted
of this.
people to hear this, because it is remarkable.
Well, but, you know, so what happened when these men first came to be in the study?
Yes.
So they would walk down the hall to my office where we were going to test them to see if they were able to make it through the week. And they looked, you know, as they would sort of hobble down, usually with their adult daughter, I remember saying to myself, what am I doing? Why am I getting into this?
Right.
Because it was going to be massive to be totally responsible for people for a full week.
Yes.
And then at the end of the study, that I was playing touch football with them,
Yes.
that a few of them
Yes.
stopped using their canes and things like that. It was really
Yes.
remarkable. A piece of it that I find very interesting was that the comparison group. So this is the group that you usually don't want anything to happen to, so you
Right,
can
you
show,
can say,
wow,
what a
look at this."
difference from
Exactly,
them,
Exactly.
you
They also got better, not as, so
Right.
here's where they start, they're over here, and then the experimental group even further. And I think the reason for that was something that happened that was unintentional. So as we're driving to the retreat in this van with all these men, I realized, oh my goodness, my graduate students weren't with me, these young
Yes.
guys. Now this was back in the time we were all a little sexist.
Okay.
And that meant that I was going to have to deal with these 8 men and these large suitcases.
Yes,
So,
this was very telling.
So when we finally got there, I made an announcement to them and planned, and I said, look, you are responsible for your suitcases. I don't care if you move them an inch at a time to get it closer to your room, or unpack it here and take out a shirt at a time. Any way you want to do it. Now, contrast this with the older daughter, the grown daughter, coming down to my office where she's holding him, helping him.
Yes.
You ask him a question, she answers, and so on.
She would have taken the bags for him.
So it was clear, it had to be clear that this was going to be very different. And, they made their own meals, and
Yes.
in a very short time, the difference was palpable. Well, while the counterclockwise, the experimental group allowed me to plan the more recent studies, the comparison group made me even more certain about this power of possibility.
Absolutely.
That why do we think that old age has to be characterized by diminished capacity to the point of people, being afraid to get old and distancing themselves
So
from the
important.
old.
What strikes me in this example with the suitcases, which I loved when I read it, is that these people had choices. They had to make choices. You have another research study in a nursing home, as I remember it, where the people had to choose. They could choose the food and the menu. They could make certain choices, and the positive effects of even being able to make choices.
Well, now, and the effect was longevity.
Yes.
But after that early research, I realized that the essence of choice making is this mindfulness. So when you're making a choice, you're noticing little things about this,
Have
little
to
things about that.
notice.
Which
There's
is,
the
right.
key word.
But choice is also interesting from another perspective. We say that people are afraid of uncertainty. Okay, but people love choice. But you can't have choice that's meaningful unless there's doubt. So,
Yeah,
so
that's an
there's a
interesting
way that
paradox,
they,
yeah.
that they prefer uncertainty in some sense.
Right.
And I think life improves enormously when you can embrace it.
Agreed. Let me move to another concept. You talk about primes a little bit. I wonder if you could mention to people what that means and what the implication of that is.
Well, lots of how we respond to things are just conditioned. It's a form of mindlessness.
Yes.
And so that language often serves as a prime. I spend a fair amount of time in the book talking about some of the oddities of language.
Yes.
For
Yes.
example, we have, you go to the doctor and you're given a diagnosis that you have a chronic disease. And chronic primes, uncontrollable, there's nothing I can do about it.
Mhm.
Well, if you can't do anything about it, then you're not going to pay attention to ways to do something
That's
about
right.
it, right?
It follows.
And, but you can never prove uncontrollability, as I said before. You either can control it or we just don't know. And so people who have chronic diseases often give up when, in fact, there's a good deal of control they can exert, possibly even to the point of reversing totally the symptoms of the disorder. And I said before about the attending to when it's better, when it's worse.
Yes.
And just sort of imagine that I had asthma.
Okay.
Okay. That with my asthma, if I don't just assume this is a chronic condition, so I don't pay attention except when I need the inhaler, but I realize, sometimes I need it, sometimes I don't. So when I'm talking to Todd, it turns out I don't need it. When I'm talking to Peter, I do need it.
So you notice that
So then
difference.
you say, well, wait a second. I just can stop seeing Peter, then I won't need an inhaler.
Yeah.
Or I can make my interactions with him more like they are with you.
Gotcha.
And I start entertaining ways of doing this that may end up working. But again, even if they don't, the search for answers like this,
Even the process.
exactly, is the process, is good for our health.
It's so helpful. And now, you've mentioned a few times about bringing the mind and body together. And in our Western culture, it just seems like so many times we've put this artificial split there. And one of the splits like that is health versus sickness. I know you mentioned that. I wonder if you could comment on that too.
Well, that goes back to, it was illustrated in some sense when I was talking about dyslexia.
Yes.
And it's true for any disorder.
Right.
But that, if I have something wrong with my stomach,
Okay.
the rest of me, my eyesight is good,
Yes.
my toes still move, that a lot of me
Right.
is functioning well,
Yeah.
that it might not serve us well to become our diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Because then we limit ourselves. If I saw myself as basically healthy, except that I have whatever this is, then I do things that are consistent with being basically healthy. And many of those things will, in fact, influence the part of me that may be less than healthy.
That's interesting. I was even wondering, it just occurred to me now as you said that, the implications for training of medical students in terms of some of these principles too.
Yeah, I think that the medical people would prosper enormously by letting their patients know that they don't know. Because pretending you know, again, leads to some
Yes.
distance between you and the person for whom you're pretending. And it's also a terrible burden. So their health would improve by them embracing, again, some of the uncertainty,
Yes.
bringing the patient into these discussions as a partner in some sense, working out possible solutions. That even a simple thing, I haven't collected any data on this,
Yeah.
but I think that it probably would work this way, that if the physician gave the person a choice of drugs, then they'd have to discuss the possible advantages or disadvantages, and the fact that it's a choice
Yes.
would lead the person to recognize that, well, gee, there is no one best way.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And then they could both, again, pursue possible solutions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about the effect of placebos? That's another thing that you talk about in the book I thought would be interesting to highlight.
Well, things like placebos and spontaneous remissions are things that the medical world, unintentionally probably, we'll say, have made into, placebos in particular, bad things, because you do a drug trial.
Right.
That, and here's where you start, and the placebo gets you to here.
And you have
and
to
then
beat that.
Exactly, that the drug has to be even this more effective.
Yes, or else it's not considered
exactly.
effective.
And so we forget, well, look at the effects of the placebo.
Yes.
And the placebo might have performed as well as the drug, in which case it doesn't come to market. Placebos are fabulously powerful medicine. Now, I've devoted my research career, one way or the other, to this question of, if you take a placebo, remember the procedure is that you give me, you the doctor, give me this inert drug, this sugar pill,
Yes.
that sort of fool me into thinking it's real medication,
Right.
so that I'll get better. Now, if I get better, if it's not the sugar pill, how am I getting better? I'm doing it myself.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
my life's work, in some sense, is to try to get this controlled more directly for people, that you don't need to go through the charade. So placebos are fabulously effective, and we take the mind and the body, we put them back together. So now the mind thinks it's taking a placebo,
Right.
the body gets better.
Very
so there
powerful.
you have it.
Very powerful. And what an innovative way of looking at this. Now, a couple questions just related to your work here in general. You are, as I understand, the first psychologist to ever become the subject of a full-length movie, starring Jennifer Aniston, I should add.
And if I had been the second, it's an exciting
Tell me how
thing.
that happened a little bit.
It's actually very funny. Several years ago, I got a call from Grant Charborough, who is a writer, and producer in California, who said that his mother had just read Mindfulness.
Yes.
Whereas when I first reported part of the Counterclockwise study.
Yes.
And called him and told him she thought it would make a wonderful movie. So
Uh-huh.
he read the book, he loved it, and then he called me, and he gets on the phone, and he starts to tell me, he spoke as I just did.
Yes.
Everything I just told
Yeah.
you. And then he starts telling me, here's why you should make the movie with me. And he went on and on and on. The moment he stopped for breath, I said, okay. I mean, he was acting as if people were banging on my door,
Right,
lining up
right.
to do this. So, and it's been great fun.
Have they started?
Well, it's very far along, but the filming of it will be very quick.
Uh-huh.
And these things take much longer than I would have thought. But it's given me time to come to know Jennifer, who is just delightful.
One last thing, too, to ask you. Besides all this, what I think is very creative and innovative thinking and useful and helpful thinking, you are also an artist. And that's, I know there's one of the books about that we talked about, too, briefly mentioned. Can you say a little bit about that part of your life, too?
About 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and with circumstances that I describe in the beginning of the On Becoming an Artist book,
Yes.
I started to paint without any reason to think that I could do this. And I started to experience a kind of instant mindfulness that was very exciting. And prior to the book, what had happened was I had done lots of research on how to prevent mindlessness, which is not very difficult. And I deal with that in The Power of Mindful Learning. But how to cure it was very hard. And in the On Becoming an Artist book is where I finally get to the cure. So it's about art, but it's really about engaging in some new activity where you can experience your mindfulness, and then turn off all of the things that prevent us from being mindful. So it's really about the myths that block our mindful pursuits, things like our mistaken notions of mistake, of talent, our fear of evaluation, things of this sort. And it was very exciting to me, though, because they've included many of my paintings in the book, on the cover of the book. And but in one instance, I was bringing one of my paintings. I do a lot of paintings of dogs, but
I saw, and I want to tell the people, by the way, they're really worth seeing. They're wonderful.
They're on my website, and
Yeah.
it's fun, but it was very hard. I brought the painting to the Provincetown Art Association and Museum for a
Yes.
show, and I walked in with it, and then I saw these other paintings that were being considered for this juried show, and then I started to walk out. Because I thought, well, mine wasn't quite as good and what have you. And then I thought, no, I can't write a book like this and be duplicitous. I have to,
Yes,
and
yes.
it ended up that it was accepted, and that was wonderful. And it's been a lot of fun.
That is great. Well, I'm going to have to cut in there and say thank you so much. This has been really, really fun, and I love what you've done, and I really appreciate your coming, Ellen. It was
Thank
nice
you
to
again,
talk to
Todd.
you, and I'd like to thank our studio audience for watching, and all the people out there, please join us again soon on another On the Sunny Side of the Street. Take care, everybody, and see you soon. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worry on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear a pitter-patter?